Master.com. With the power of Tandem HR, you are in the fast lane on Main Street with Get Down to Business with Shalom Klein, the show for business and jobs. Now, the champion of networking, the advocate of jobs, the guru of business, your host, Shalom Klein.
I love this line. Milton Berle once said, if opportunity doesn't knock, build a door. We are all about small business, jobs, and entrepreneurship and business. We talk a lot about business here. You are on with Get Down to Business, and I'm your host, Shalom Klein. Remember, you can always download podcasts from Get Down to Business on my website at shalomklein.com. And while you are there, don't forget to follow me on Twitter at Shalom Klein. It's going to be a jam-packed week of content and information that you won't want to miss. This week, we're going to be talking about business development, and I know our guest, Kevin Einbinder, has a lot to say on the subject. Get Down to Business is powered by Tandem HR. They're your solution center. Check them out online at tandemhr.com. So, Kevin, welcome back to the program. We've had you back on. We've had you on in the past, and business development is a really important topic.
Yeah, it's very, very, very important and stuff, and it's really something important to Tandem, and I know it's very important to a lot of your listeners.
Absolutely. So business development often is referred to as sales, but there's more to say on the subject, and really excited about some of the tips we could get from you. So how are clients serving as your marketing tool at Tandem?
So, there's so much research out there that talks about the fact that if you have client retention, you have strong clients who really speak your story, they provide testimonials, they can speak about the quality of service, they're probably going to be one of the biggest proponents when it comes to business development. So they're happy with the service, it's consistent, the quality is there, it's better than the competition, all those different things. If they can be your brand champion, then you're halfway there.
So that should be a goal of for our listeners when they get back to work tomorrow morning and trying to turn your clients into a business development tool.
Absolutely. What happens a lot of times that I see that sometimes businesses aren't that successful is they get kind of complacent, in which what they'll do is they have a strong book of business and then they kind of forget about them and stuff. They know that they're going to renew their contracts and all that. But at the end of the day, having consistent communications with those clients is very important. And I'm not talking, we talk a lot about Tandem about high-touch customer service. And what we really mean by that is it's not just this sporadic emails occasionally to the clients and stuff. It's really those face-to-face meetings. It's building those relationships, and not just with the decision makers within the organization, but also the influencers within that organization too. So you're really as comprehensive as possible to be able to build several layers in case somebody leaves a relationship or leaves the organization and all that. My
father, who's likely listening to the show today, so hi, Dad, always tells me that people can't say no to you when they're eating your food. And I firmly believe that's true. So I believe a business owner often has to wear multiple hats, but business development is one of those hats. Client relationships are one of those hats. And get out to eat every single day. Take people out to lunch. Take your clients out. And even if you don't have something specific to talk to them about, it's all relationship building. It's all, as I always say, it's all networking, which is really important. So a side benefit to keeping those relationships warm is how much cheaper is client retention than business development?
Well, it's interesting. I was looking at some studies, and there was actually something that was just printed from the Harvard Business School. And they said on average, increasing customer retention rates by 5% actually increases profits by 20 to 25%. So being able to sustain those relationships comparing to starting from scratch actually goes a very, very long way, because if you think about it, all the different steps that goes into business development and retaining that client compared to someone that you already exist, it can be very, very profitable.
Interesting. So do all companies' customer service training programs look pretty much the same?
Well, there are some that are very basic. So, for example, we all know, people are listening to the show and you think about customer service. Well, it's about acknowledging the customer. It's about, the customer is always right, blah, 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 and stuff. And I come from the school of thought that it really needs to be modified based on a couple different things. One is, what is the product or service? What is the culture? Does it support in terms of a certain level of customer service, not overpromising? So you really need, and I know we've talked a lot about corporate culture in the past, but ultimately a culture that's going to support delivering not just good customer service, but really exceptional or exemplary customer service.
Absolutely. Last week I had to call my auto insurance company, Geico. And when I mentioned something, I got a new car, the customer service rep or whoever it was, wherever they were, they engaged in a whole conversation. We were talking about my car, and they really expressed an interest. I was just blown away by that. And I think that's what companies should strive for. But you don't need to be a massive company like Geico to do it. Any small business can do it as well.
As a matter of fact, it's interesting you mentioned that because it's the positive story. So a lot of times people harp on the negative and stuff. And I actually recently called Geico myself and had a great experience. And it wasn't just about the insurance. They were engaging me. It was a one-on-one communication. And it was just like, wow, I really feel a relationship with this brand. But the stories that get told are the really bad experiences that people have. And those are the ones that sometimes stay with people. But when you share that good story, then people are more likely to say, hey, I want to be I want to know that brand. I want to be part of that too.
Yeah, it's fascinating. So, the nature of business is that you have big customers, you have small customers. Are all customers equal, or are there some that should get more of the concierge service?
No, that's a good question because of the fact that you got to be realistic. So I'm right now working with a couple clients, and one of them is a gigantic client, and one is a very small client. And one is a nonprofit, one is a for-profit. The point being, though, is there is a certain core service in terms of core expectations when it comes to customer service. So, for example, we always reach out to the customers. It'll be like every month through a newsletter. Everybody gets that level of service. But that gigantic account, which is like more than $1 million account of revenue, we obviously have to have more communications with them and stuff. And we need to be practical about it too. Because one of the things that I see that sometimes happens with organizations is they spend so much time with those high maintenance small clients that their energy is just drawn and saturated from that. And then it's the big clients that they get complacent about. And then all of a sudden they're out for an RFP. So things like that can happen.
It's interesting. We're talking with Kevin Einbinder, Senior Project Manager at Tandem HR. Kevin, how do you measure good customer service or gauge the level provided by your customer-facing employees?
There's a couple ways of doing it, and there's so many different theories on it. My perspective is really kind of looking backwards and thinking, okay, what does success look like? Is it client retention? Is it satisfaction? So a lot of companies go crazy with SurveyMonkey, with doing these different interviews and stuff. And my background initially was in qualitative and quantitative research, and I really believe kind of using a mixed methodology. So yeah, the surveys are great to do, customer satisfaction surveys once a year, benchmarking the data and all that, but then also doing the interviews with people and talking with them and doing those conversations and figuring out what are some of the quote things that are coming up. What are some of the things, for example, is the company responsive? Do they anticipate our needs? Things of that nature. So really looking. So for example, for Tandem, if there's major legislation that's coming out about the Affordable Care Act, we could hear it on the news. What we should be doing is letting our customers know, because chances are there's going to be ramifications. So we could sit on our laurels and just say, well, that's good information to know. Or what we could do is be more proactive about it and say, you may have heard about this in the news. Here's what Tandem can do to partner with you based on, the outcome of that. So being more proactive and taking that information to the next level. Exactly.
Communicating, which is really important. So how can businesses control how their employees communicate with their clients?
I'm a big proponent of this whole thing called, I learned this years and years ago. I work for a fairly large brand. I'll just say that their logo is Blue Cross and Blue Shield, and I won't give away the brand. But one of the things that we talked about there was brand champions. And I believe right from the get-go that any employee who works with an organization should be a brand champion. They should have base knowledge about the core offerings of that company. And that shouldn't just be through orientation, because employees are just so overwhelmed through orientation. It should be throughout the year. As a matter of fact, you and I have talked about the fact of elevator speeches. There should be an elevator speech. Maybe marketing develops it or whatever. Maybe it's a calling card. But it really gives a sense of what that organization organization is about and what the core service offerings are, so that every employee from administrative support to senior management is consistent about the message to potential prospects.
I believe in that. That elevator pitch and having everybody have a unified message is really important. We're running out of time, but do you recommend rewarding clients that lead to new business? What do you think is appropriate?
There's some sensitivities because sometimes ethically people feel a little bit uncomfortable. What you're saying in terms of clients, of rewarding them for referrals and stuff. It depends. I've actually heard of some cases in which sometimes people feel a little bit uncomfortable about that. I think what it is ultimately recognizing them, taking them out to lunch, simple things like that. A simple thank you note goes a very long way. So simple things like that.
Really good advice. Kevin Einbinder, Senior Project Manager at Tandem HR. You've got a lot of advice on business development. How can our listeners get a hold of you?
Either my phone number, 224-353-2716, or my email, KEINBINDER@tandemhr.com.
Fantastic. Coming up, we're going to check in with executive business coach and visit Chair Dick Smith. You won't want to miss it. You're listening to the show that's all about small business, jobs, and entrepreneurship. Thanks, Kevin, for joining us, and check out tandemhr.com for more resources and information.